London-born and educated, Richard de Crespigny, AM, got his first taste of a future flying career as a 14-year-old when his father took him on a tour of the Royal Australian Air Force Academy at Point Cook in Victoria. In 1975, aged 17, he joined the RAAF. 1 year later, he started flying. During his 11 years flying transport, jet, helicopter aircraft with the RAAF, he was then seconded as aide-de-camp to 2 Australian Governor-Generals, Sir Zelman Cowen and Sir Ninian Stephen. Richard remained with the RAAF until 1986 when he joined Qantas, flying Boeing 747, Airbus A380 and A380. In 2010, he was the captain on board the Qantas flight QF32 when it suffered a catastrophic explosion. His multi-award-winning and best-selling book, QF32, is a blow-by-blow story of what went down when things went wrong in the air. So Captain Richard de Crespigny and his crew confronted extraordinary challenges over those next 4 hours, with only 3 partially working engines and a potentially explosive plane facing an imminent emergency landing. Even experienced crash investigators later revealed they thought recovery in such circumstances was impossible. Yet, in the end, all aboard walked away safely. So why was there a seemingly miraculous outcome to what could so easily have become one of the world's worst aviation disasters? And how did the captain and his crew remain so calm in such a stressful situation? The answer is, of course, leadership, teamwork and skill. So Richard still flies the Airbus 380. He delivers presentations on the elements of resilience, the knowledge, training, experience, teamwork, decision-making, crisis management and post-traumatic stress and risk management to government agencies and to Fortune 500 companies.
Thanks, Tamara. That was such a good introduction. I need to take you with me wherever I go. And she's done a really good introduction. Just to get it to, I was here in Perth for one of the best years of my life in 1979 when I did pilot's course. We're flying nappies out of Bullsbrook at Pierce, and it was such a good time. And it brings back, when I'm back here, it brings back all those memories. So it's great to be back here. Now, just to get a feeling for the audience that I'm about to talk to, how many people have read QF32? Great. Okay. All right. So this is the what. This is the what happens in the air. This is the story of resilience in aviation. Right? And we've got a lot of young future pilots here, so I'll discuss some more about that. But this is the what. And in essence, the fly is the how and the why, but it goes beyond aviation. All right, so tonight I'd like to talk to you about resilience. And a lot of us here have been to school, university, been through life, practiced lots of things, and we would like to think that we're resilient, but we've never really been tested. We've never been put to the test. Some of us have. But what is resilience? Resilience is the ability to recover when things go wrong. Sometimes when things go wrong, we have to recoil, retract, simplify what we do, and then when the threat goes away, we can spring back. So it's recovering when things go wrong. And I had my test in my life, which was in 2010, the 4th of November. I was flying an Airbus A380, which is the biggest, most powerful, expensive aircraft, $400 million, 4 million parts, most amazing machine. And we were flying from Singapore to Sydney, and 4 minutes after takeoff, the engine number 2 exploded into thousands of parts. 500 parts hit the aeroplane, severing 650 wires. 21 out of 22 systems were affected. And it took us about 2 hours to manage all the threats and the errors. The threat and error management means that if you detect the threat, you stop it happening, or we failed at that. And then if you can, you try and fix it. If you can't fix it, you mitigate it. So we spent 2 hours working out what that damage was, could we fix it, if not, how to mitigate it. And then we spent 2 hours on the ground with a machine that was really, one of the pilots thought it was more stressful on the ground than in the air. Anyway, that's all written into the QF32. The interesting thing was that on the ground back in the terminal, I told the passengers what had happened and why, what was about to happen to them, what the special requirements are, and which is a NITS checklist, which is in flight. And so I can rattle that off, but we tell them all these things, we tell them the honest truth about what happened, and so we give them the ability to be informed, have the answers, feel slightly in control. And then I did something else. Now, there was no requirement for me to debrief the passengers at all. But what I did next, people thought I was nuts. I gave my mobile phone number to the passengers. I said, you're about to leave my care, and I can't look after you anymore. And so if you think that we're not looking after you, or if you think that we don't care, so now the onus is on you, it's your perspective. If you think that we're not caring for you, then here's my mobile telephone number, ring me and I'll fix it. And when you get a personal guarantee that was, first of all, it's a single point of contact. And these days you try and contact a company, look at the website, you might not even find the phone number, and then you get to a call centre and it gets very difficult. So a single point of contact is a great help for a person who's suffering in a crisis. It also means that when you give your personal phone number, if there's something I said that was wrong, they could ring up and abuse me. If there was something I missed out, they could ring up and say, look, you didn't tell me about this. And a few people did ring me and ask me, you didn't explain exactly why we didn't get off the aeroplane. So they can ring up and ask questions. But when you do this, the full and open disclosure and the personal guarantee, it brought the passengers in as a team, as an additional team. And so I warned them about the press. I said, when you leave the terminal, the press are going to be outside. I knew that there'd be a lot of press outside, and the passengers at that stage were happy. They probably didn't realise it. But I said, the press are going to say, the A380 is a hopeless aeroplane, my airline's useless, the Rolls-Royce engine broken is hopeless, and the pilots were scared, and the passengers were scared. So I told them, now here is the truth. I'm telling you that the engines only fail 1 in every 300,000 flying hours. So only one in every 4.5 pilots, if you're going to fly in a career, only 1 in 4.5 pilots will ever experience an engine failure in your career. And the engine the type of failure that we had, the uncontained failure, it's never happened in the 200 million engine hours and the 40 years that engine's been, the core of the engine's been working. So it was simply just bad luck. And the pilots weren't scared. We were busy, but we weren't scared. So the passengers left the terminal fully primed, and they took control, and the media said all these things, and the passengers said, no, I've spoken to the captain, this is the truth. And they corrected the media. The passengers took control of the whole brand of the airline, they protected it. And in this crisis, we didn't just recover, which is resilience. To a great degree, the brand came out stronger. There was growth from this crisis. And so the story about QF32 is a story about team resilience. Because as a leader, I'm like a conductor in an orchestra. I move my little wand and all the musicians play the music. The musicians play the music. QF32 was a team win. With team resilience, where 8 teams pulled their knowledge, their training, their experience, teamwork, leadership, crisis management, decision making, and risk. Now that is the 8 elements of resilience. And I wrote about that in QF32. But then something else happened to me after the event. I used to have black hair, not many wrinkles. So that changed. And I suffered post-traumatic stress that I wrote about in the book. But now I was put on a platform where it's been a privilege to walk around and talk to people like you around the world. And I've also spoken to business leaders, the best business leaders, in the best of breed companies, in all these organisations. So politics, finance, legal, accounting, space, science. And when I give my story at QF32, I render it in the dialect and the lexicon of the industry that I'm talking to. And so to do that, I had to research these industries. And so I go into medicine, I would research what they do, how they are resilient, and then I would render my talk to suit them. And then in the process of doing that, I found out that there are the elements of resilience in aviation are common across not just all industries, but also in community areas and also in your personal life. So I have analysed all these in Fly, and I include post-traumatic stress because everyone will suffer it sometime during their life. And I think what's slightly different is I have this passion for neuroscience. So pilots, I'm an empirical skeptic. Now what does empirical skeptic mean? Empirical means I'm driven by data. I don't assume, presume, I don't guess. And so I'm driven by facts only. And a skeptic means I question everything. It doesn't mean I say no, I just question. Well, is that really true? Let's have a look. So, to be an empirical skeptic and looking at all these elements of resilience, I had to go to the brain to work out how the brain worked. So I've been analysing neuroscience in the last 10 years. And so all these elements of resilience, if I set up the neuroscience of the brain, if we understand why the brain does what it does, then we can work at how we should learn best, build our knowledge, the first element of resilience, how we process knowledge so that the brain will store it, remember it, and recall it efficiently. What's the purpose of sleep? Why is sleep important? Training. What's the best way to train? To learn something and remember it? Or what's the best way to train so when there's an almighty explosion, you don't panic and freeze and go into fight, flight, or paralysis, which is the startle reflex. So all these things sit upon the neuroscience of the brain, so it explains why, and it should make it understandable. And so it is the story of Fly. And as I said, we can apply it to your corporate life, your family life, and your community life. When we look at the corporate life and we talk about leadership as one of the elements of resilience, there are many types of leaders. There are procedural leaders, there are narcissistic leaders, and a narcissistic person who everything is for him or her. It's ego-based. Ego is a prime requirement. And ego is the enemy of teamwork. So a narcissistic leader can have local success, but will not be resilient because you need teamwork. So the role of the leader in a resilient business is to create a culture where it can't fail. So what is the culture? A culture is what people do when no one's looking. Interesting, in medicine, it's important to wash your hands. In a hospital, they audit how many people wash their hands. 70% of doctors wash their hands when they've been washed. When they know they're not being washed, it drops to 30%. So we have to look at the culture. So who sets the culture? The leader sets the culture, doesn't he? No, the leader does not set the culture. The leader is the culture. The personality and the values and beliefs of the leader will infuse the whole organisation. So the most important attribute for a leader is his values and his beliefs. You may not agree with them. There might be a politician that you don't agree with what they decide, but everything that they do will be based, when you understand why you do the things that you do, number one, you will attract people who believe in the same things that you believe in. But when you explain why you do the things you do, how you do them, and what comes out is automatic. Why did I give my mobile phone number in the full and open disclosure to the passengers? Because my values and beliefs is that when you're travelling on my aeroplane, your partner has a right to expect you home for dinner. That's my why. So in the good times, I'll get you to the airport on time. In the bad times, I will get you home. And I might have to get in the car and drive you home. But when I have that as my why, I will assume unlimited responsibility and authority to do that. So everything is easy. So the leader's values are really important, and he sets the culture. And you can tell a culture in an organisation, generally in an airplane, it takes about 10 seconds to find the culture. Just that first smile. But why is it so quick? Well, what happens is in your brain, let me give an example for the A380. We have a few budding aviators here and engineers. The A380 has about 1,000 computers. It has 250,000 sensors and parameters to tell the machine what's happening. It has about 55 flight control surfaces to move, and the engines produce about 500,000 horsepower with the all the turbines. That's impressive. Now the brain. The brain has 4 million sensors coming up into the brain concurrently. It has about 500,000 kilometres of 150,000 kilometres of neural pathways. And to build a computer to do the processing that the brain does, you would need a couple of megawatts of power, and the computer's in a room this large. So the brain somehow takes all these 3 million sensors and pattern matches it. So when a pattern comes to the brain that the brain recognises, it just throws the answer out at the back end. And so learning things is learning the brain to recognise a pattern. So we can only have a very narrow view into all those sensors, and this is our mental model. And our mental model that we're conscious of is tiny. So you can't feel your toe until I've just mentioned it. You don't know your breathing rate until I've just mentioned it. All the things that satisfy the predictions of your brain. Now, the human brain has thought, awareness, consciousness, and prediction. The primary aim of the human brain is to predict the next minute, the next hour, so that it will tell you to run away or you're safe to sit here. So the perceptions that you have for that process is very narrow. This is the mental model, and in a team we want to share that mental model and have everyone focused on the right things. But in the background, it's summing up all the other inputs that come in. So your body language, the way you stand, you are now looking obstinate, angry, happy. I want to get out of this room because my feet are pointing that way. You detect this stuff automatically by the background processes in your brain. This is body language using posture. And there are 650 skeletal muscles that are controlled by the brain. So when you have an attitude, you are projecting in 650 dimensions. So when you walk into a company and you look at someone's smile, you're noticing their smile. Subconsciously, your brain is picking up 650 skeletal muscles, and it is picking up the whole culture of this company. And that's why you can tell the culture straight away. So the leader is the culture. The leader has to make the staff feel happy so they project the right culture. So the leader has to have vision of where you want to go. It has to have a path to show you how to get there. He or she has to give you the tools to achieve the job. And the leader has to make it almost guaranteed that you will pass. That is the leader's job. And that's why success is a team success. And if they don't do that, that's why failure is a leader's fault. Now, if the leader's not prepared to take responsibility for failures, then he's not ready to be a leader. But the leader has one more thing to do, and that is to give psychological safety. Sheryl Sandberg, the Chief Operating Officer of Facebook, said, when you see something wrong, stop, take 100% responsibility and fix it. The standard you walk past is the standard that you accept. So we want, in an organisation, people to take responsibility when things are wrong to fix it. How many times do you go to a company and the person behind the counter says, look, I'm sorry you're being mistreated, I'd really like to help you, but I get sacked. No. The leader has to say to his people, I'm giving you the responsibility that when you see something wrong, step up, take responsibility, no excuses, and fix it. And I'm giving you the authority to do it. That means not everything's going to work the way the leader wants, but that's okay. But when you give psychological safety for people to do that, which also means you're giving psychological safety for the people in the team to say, excuse me, Captain, I think you've missed something. Or the nurse in the operating theatre where they know the doctor hasn't washed his hands and he's about to operate. The nurse will say, doctor, the operations, stop the operations on hold until you wash your hands. Until you give people the ability to step up and give their feedback to either fix the problem, you really don't have the optimal team or resilient team. And when you do give them those power to step up, then your team's getting resilient. Because Computers can actually be pretty good. They can do simple things repetitively. Humans can't. Humans are very good at creating novel solutions, but humans make errors. Everyone makes errors. You will make errors, your parents make errors, fighter pilots make errors. Everybody makes an error. It's a human condition. We don't. Pilots don't try to stop things happening because we can't. We didn't service the engine. We don't know the condition of a passenger's health when they get on board. We can't stop it. Pilots are trained to repair, fix things when they detect them. That's what resilience is. So, before every flight, I'll say to my crew of pilots, I'm the captain, and I'm going to make lots of mistakes in this sector. And I demand that you tell me every mistake I make. You can be as pedantic as you want, but prioritise when to tell me. But I want to know, because everyone will make mistakes, and the resilience comes by the team monitoring and supporting and feeding back. So when I find I'm happy to tell it, and in QF32 I talk about storming on the flight deck where I was telling the check captains where to sit. Well, a leader can do that, can't he? Yes, but if he wants to give it, he has to be able to take it. And so during that flight in QF32, I discussed a time when I wanted to climb for an Armstrong spiral, and the pilot said, "No, stop." And I listened, and I stopped, and I thanked them for that input. Because the worst thing you can have in leadership is ego. You've got to be thinking for the whys, which is the passengers, and that means that everything you do is for the safety of the passengers. So if you're going to be a leader, you have to work out what your whys are, and that will determine how you do things, what happens, and how you communicate. John Howard said the most important thing is values and beliefs. The next most important thing is that you have a great connection or a great relationship with those that you immediately lead, the ones immediately under you. And I would think we probably agree that the major problem with politics in the last 10 years is that they haven't done that. So as a leader, you must keep those immediately under you tight so they don't in the ditch for you. That is about teamwork, leadership in companies, and then we can also take these elements of resilience into our personal life. And this is where we have the common element. Because you might have read that Elon Musk isn't very happy with the concept of sentient robots. You know what sentient means? Sentience is what the human brain does. Thought, awareness, consciousness, prediction. And that's what humans do. That's the whole purpose of your brain. And when we can build a parallel computer that can take a few million inputs concurrently and process in the way the brain does, which is about 15, 20 years, then we'll certainly be able to build sentient robots that do everything a human being does. It'll start with whatever intelligence we want to give it, and it'll learn things but about 1 million times faster than a human. That's scary, says Elon Musk. I don't think I like that. This is a disruptor. But there are so many disruptors in life at the moment. Let's think of a few. Energy, transport, big data, gene manipulation, 3D printing, automation, robots. These are all disruptors. And some people are scared. But there's a great saying, there's a Chinese proverb. When the winds of change blow, some people build walls and other people build windmills. So instead of looking at these disruptors as threats, we need to look upon them as opportunities. Now they will surely happen. For the parents here, just on the sentient robots, as a parent here, if you have to send one of your children to war, would you rather send your child or a robot? So the sentient robots are coming. I must cease flying at 65 in 4 years' time. And when I finish flying, my next career, because everyone will have multiple careers in their life with all this disruption, my next career is to build sentient robots that people will sleep with. Now let me explain that. 30% of people sleep with their pets in the same bed. And so I will build sentient robots that will keep people company in their old age. That'll be the biggest market for the sentient robots. So, instead of building walls, build windmills. Instead of, what you want to do is disrupt yourself and keep control, rather than letting other people disrupt you and having no control. So let's look at a few examples. Let's look at the biggest and best companies in the world. Who has disrupted themselves very well as a company recently? Any example?
Kodak.
Okay, Kodak. Great example. Kodak is the one that had the patents for digital photography, and they didn't use it. They licensed it, but they didn't use it because they didn't want to damage their film market. So Kodak did not disrupt themselves, and they went broke in about 2012, right? So that's a good example of someone that didn't disrupt themselves. Now, the best two examples of companies that did. Who makes your phone? You got a telephone?
Nokia.
The head of Nokia said, I don't know what we did wrong, but we lost. So we never really quite understood disruption. Apple disrupted themselves. The Apple iPhone disrupted their iPod. It destroyed it. But they disrupted themselves and kept control. The next big, and that's Apple's $1 trillion company. Next $1 trillion company, Amazon. What did they do? They disrupted their print book, their paper book, with electronic books.
Yeah.
And they're $1 trillion company. So take control and disrupt yourself. So you have to you don't want to fear change, you want to fear not changing. Charles Darwin didn't say that the fittest survive. He never said that. He said it's what people who adapt that survive. So we have to adapt. We have to look at these disruptors as opportunities. So we have to surf the edge of chaos. We're right up against these innovative products where there's lots of risks, and we have to make decisions and take risks. We don't want to take gambles, which means there's no mitigation if things go wrong. We want to take risks. And so we have to take risks, we have to make decisions. And some of these decisions will be wrong. There's no question. If you listen to Richard Branson, he will say, if I'm great today, it's only because I've failed along the way. All these failures are stepping stones to my success. So we need to understand that to succeed, we must fail along the way. Anyone who has never failed has never made a decision. And equilibrium is the precursor to death. So we have to learn to fail fast, which means recognising a bad situation and getting out while we can, and using it as a learning lesson. When we fail, if we fall down, we want to get up again. Learn, adjust, retry. Fail fast, fail well. So failing well means that we actually see failure. And as I said again, the pilots, we expect to fail the whole time. We have pilots and great leaders have a fierce will, but also, oddly, a strong amount of humility and vulnerability to say, I don't know it all, I need the team to help. So we need to understand that we will fail, we accept failure, we get up again, we retry. Elon Musk, when all his rockets were blowing up in the last 3 years, he was tweeting, space is hard. He's kept going, and he's done remarkable things. Fail fast, fail well. So I dare you to let your kids fail. I dare you to let them go out, play in the field, climb the trees, ride their bike to school, walk around. Expose your children to the risks that you faced when you were young that made you great. Because the older generation today seem to be unfairly protecting the children from risks. Because if you don't expose them to risk, you don't give them the ability to recognise, rate, live, and take streetwise risks, and to learn how to face risks in the future. Because if we bring up our kids that they never fail in school, sport, when they leave home and they start a business, where the other businesses are trying to put them out of business automatically, everyone is a bully. And life is hard. Life is full of bullies from other species and predators, so we have to be tough. And the way to be tough is to teach our kids to fail well and fail fast. There's another part to resilience, personal resilience. And it applies to the older generation, or all the adults really. Half the people in this audience are not personally resilient because you have been divorced. Now, I know that divorce is necessary in many situations and unavoidable, but there are many divorces that are not. Remember, success in the military, you would take off in an aircraft and you would fly in a formation and you would avoid predators and threats, and where you landed was often not where you took off. But you kept in formation because if a formation split into separate aircraft, you'll be shot down. Formations protect each other and they fly and they succeed. And that's what happens in the Defence Force, and they're resilient. And that's what happens in marriage. The person in marriage you marry is not the same person 20 or 30 years later. Everyone has to adjust as they miss predators and threats and challenges. And you're changing in life for business. Your work environment's changing. You're adjusting and learning, retrying in work. But wouldn't it be great if we can just keep close to our partner in life? Wouldn't it be great if we could put the same effort into our personal relationship, the same effort that we put into our marriage, into our work? If we did, and we changed and keep the formation with our partner, the marriages would be a lot more successful. And step number one is getting rid of ego when you take off. I talk about, for the younger generation, resilience is understanding that you will always have a lifetime of learning. When you finish school, then there's university or some other training. When you finish that, let's say you finish graduate school, you're a doctor and you graduate and you can now be a surgeon. The minute you start being a surgeon, if you hold that skill set constant, it'll stay constant, it'll actually slowly drift to failure, and you'll become legacy and you'll make mistakes. Experience is, and this is in aviation and your personal life, experience is a curse. Experience kills. There was an article in the paper about an aircraft accident this weekend. Experience kills. Because often people will say, I've always operated this way, I've always flown an aircraft this way, and they'll always say that in inquiry, generally where someone has died. Because experience is only not a curse if you have a lifetime of learning where you keep your skills developing as the markets change. You have to resist to normalise the deviations of, let's say, not washing your hands. You have to keep yourself learning and developing to keep yourself current. You have to actively destroy information in your brain. You have to actively forget things to make way for the new ideas. It's a responsibility for everyone in this room to maintain a lifetime of learning and development, or you are on a drift to failure. And for the elderly people who are not working anymore, there are a few elements of resilience that we can talk about. One is use it or lose it. So for the simple things, muscles. You have to build muscles. If you don't move your muscles, they will dissolve and you will lose them. If you don't exercise your bones, if you don't stress yourself, when spacemen go into orbit, their bones dissolve. Your bones replace themselves every 10 years. So if you don't stress your bones, they will slowly dissolve. Use your bones, stress your body, or lose it. It's also your brain. Your neurons. We have 100 billion neurons connecting by 100 trillion hyperlinks or synapses. So a bit of information here. This is a neuron with a bit of data. There are 1,000 connections. So if this neuron says de Crespigny, then de Crespigny has a blue suit. He's in Perth. He's a pilot. He's a male. But there's 1,000 of these connections. There's only so much material to make all these connections. And it has to be renewed, otherwise those connections like muscles or bones slowly dissolve. So use it, keep activating those neurons, or you will lose it. So, reading will extend your life 3 years. Exercise builds new neurons in your hippocampus, which is like your daytime memory, or like the RAM in a computer. Exercise, I think, is the closest thing to dreaming. You can be really creative. If you exercise, particularly if you go walking, you can fix problems. You give yourself a problem. I take a notepad when I go running or walking, and I'm solving problems. And when I get back to the room after running, hotel room, I've forgotten I forgot everything that I've done in the run, but I have my notes. And it's exactly the same as dreaming. Because there's a reason why you should not remember your dreams. That's another topic. So use it or lose it. And the biggest challenge for the elderly people, the biggest challenge is that as you get older, you get a bit of bias. Experience creates biases. You can only store information relative to the stuff you already have. You can only build knowledge that fits into the context of your previous learning. So as you get older, you get more narrow-minded and more narrow-minded. And in fact, this is actually quite funny. There is a discussion in the book where you are creative. The creativity that people have to think up brand new ideas that would give you a Nobel Prize. You're only creative until 35. After 35, creativity is dead. No one has really any creativity yet left after 35. And a lot of people who are reading this book, proving it, found this very challenging and got very angry. So I gave them an experience test, the experience bias test that's in the book. And they got very angry because they couldn't do it, but a 5-year-old could. So all the creative people are young, before 35, but the elder people, they have the wisdom and experience, and they can use their existing knowledge. They can experiment with it, they can apply it, they can modify it, and they have all this wisdom that truly has great value. They can't think of a brand new idea that is outside the box of what they have in their brain. But their brains, Warren Buffett is the most fantastic investor at 90 years of age, and he has mastered investment. But that's the wisdom that he's got, that he's using. So we need to understand that we're in a company, we need the young people that are creative, who win the Nobel Prizes, and we need the old people who have the wisdom and experience to apply their knowledge. We need both. But for the elderly people who have got all this experience bias and they're getting these narrow views on everything in life and very particular thoughts, which is just natural, their group of friends shrinks. Less and less friends. And then they get older and their partner dies and they're on their own. The biggest group for suicide in society in Australia is men over 85. And people alone, people who are lonely, and loneliness is a major problem in society. They can go into depression, which is a physical complaint, and that then causes all kinds of problems like sitting down too long and their muscles go, then they don't read or they don't talk. The most important thing in old age is to keep a relationship going. Your longevity is most affected by the relationships you keep. So you talk, you move, you keep it interesting, you use it, because if you don't, you've lost it. And that's it. I talk about post-traumatic stress in flying. And I had it up to QF32 after the event. I found I was crying when I recalled the event. So I would be talking about it and I'd say, well, when I got to the point where I went through an Armstrong spiral, when I got to that point, I've now put all these patterns into my brain that the brain goes, snap, I recognise that situation. Now I'm back into the flight exactly where I was. My brain overloads itself and I cry. I didn't understand all this back then. I just found that I was crying and I thought I was going nuts. But I saw psychological help and I had that fixed. You can expect it to happen, don't hide it. Then I found my brain was looping. If you've seen the movie Sully, with Sully Sullenberger, he couldn't think. After the event, I couldn't read a sentence. I couldn't concentrate on the words. A sentence with 10 words, I'd read it 5 times and I couldn't understand it. So I stopped reading. I gave up newspapers or turning on the TV. I was so distracted. And the incident, for its 2 hours in the air and 2 hours on the ground, was cycling through my brain. And it was exhausting. And I'd go to sleep, and I'd dream it, and I'd wake up, and I'm exhausted. I didn't understand that. So I saw psychological help, and I was fixed. I fixed it. No one teaches you about post-traumatic stress. But sometime in our life, we're all going to lose someone that's close. Post-traumatic stress is a normal reaction to stress. If there was a line outside this door as we left the room, It would terrify us, and it would serve a good purpose for us to remember that so we don't go to that door again tomorrow. So stress, post-traumatic stress is a creation, it's a development as part of the evolution to protect us so we survive. But we don't need to hold these stresses up high and have them last our whole life. I have a friend, she's my age, and she told a story where the father came up to her and he said, I have to tell you, Julie, that I was in the Navy in the Second World War, and I had a patrol boat, he's American, I had a patrol boat in the Philippines, and we came across 100 Japanese in the water. And the creed is to pick up anyone in the water, even the enemy. However, he said we were a small patrol boat, we had to go and pick up some special forces from one of the islands nearby, and if we'd taken 100 passengers and 100 sailors, they would have overrun our boat. So we left them, and they drowned. And I have had nightmares about that every night of my life since then. And he said that to his daughter about 5 years ago. She was the first, he said, you're the first person I've told, and she has 4 sisters, and he had 2 wives. And he said that 6 months before he died. He carried that grief. So for the veterans who have come back from war, I was in the Air Force, but I joined to have an exciting life. But the Air Force is there to kill people quickly and efficiently, to save the country. When you go to war, people will do things that probably they find disgusting. And they come home with these, knowing they've done things that they never wanted to do, but they had to do. They can't tell their wives, they wouldn't understand. The only people that understand what they did and why is the other soldiers. They come back with these thoughts, they don't say anything about it. It's up in the daytime memory, the hippocampus. And memories on top of the hippocampus do not get degraded during sleep. The top 20% stay strong, and they can cause nightmares, and they stay strong, and they're not deprecating. The trivial memories, like when you went to the bathroom tonight, the first part of sleep takes all those bottom 80% of memories and reduces them. So having a lunch, what you had for lunch, or going to the bathroom gets knocked at the bottom, you don't remember it. It's the way the brain gets rid of trivial things that helps you remember the major things. So if we don't process that top 20% of the hippocampus memories, it will stay active in the hippocampus. We'll have nightmares at night. They won't get processed. They won't get pushed into our cortex or the slow brain, where they are then mixed and diluted and simplified, cross-linked with nice memories. So the soldier that comes back from Iraq has got horrible memories. We need to say, well, you need to think, when you think of Iraq, think of a game of tennis, think of sunny weather, think of the ocean. Dilute, there's only so much chemical for neurons to hyperlink to other things. If you make a connection of a bad memory to something nice, you're going to decrease the memory to something horrible. So we can handle these stresses, but if you don't, then it won't reduce. It'll stay there in your mind, either to give you nightmares every night, or maybe in 20 years' time, when you hear a helicopter flying overhead, it'll trigger a fear response. Post-traumatic stress is real. We should expect it. The most dangerous thing of going to war is coming home. In America in 2014, and I don't have data for Australia, I'm trying to find it. In America in 2014, 7,000 American veterans committed suicide. That is 3 times the public rate. And that 7,000 in 1 year is more than all the deaths that they've had from all their campaigns since 1990 in battle. And when there is suicide in a family, 120 people get the word suicide injected into their lexicon. When someone dies from some incident, if people have died in QF32, there'll be 70 people who would have stress from every person passing. So there are lots of secondary victims in stressful situations. People ask me how I feel. No one's asked how my wife felt after QF32. For the person who has an accident, you've hurt someone else, you feel sorry for the person that's hurt. But in aviation, sometimes the pilots that have an accident, even when no one's hurt, they've committed suicide. There are many secondary victims. I mentioned 70 to 1 and 120 to 1. So post-traumatic stress is really quite widespread. We will all get it at some stage if we can understand the process and understand that there is a cure, but just the same way that Richard Branson can say that every stepping stone of failure, or every failure is a stepping stone to success, you can treat post-traumatic stress and not just recover. There can be growth from trauma. You can come out stronger than when you went in. So when someone says to you, I am suffering post-traumatic stress, please believe them, be empathetic, guide them to professional help. The last thing I want to mention is that some of the trouble we have in life is our perception of the world we live in. And a lot of what the press and what the politicians tell us is just plain simply wrong. They want to create fear, doubt and uncertainty to keep us under control. So people will say, let's make Australia great again. Well, no, you don't need to, because Australia is great. And in fact, America's GDP per head of population is so far above any other country in the world. America is also great at the moment. It's always been great. So people have been fed information that gives them the wrong perspective on life. If you want to write down two things, and it is in the back of Flyer anyway, there are two books you need to research. One is called Factfulness. One word, Factfulness. It's written by Hans Rosling. He does analysis of humanity. He's come up with 50 graphs to describe the death rate from wars, from famine, disease, murder, suicide, poverty, obesity, all these things. And with the exception of suicide in some countries, every indicator for humanity is getting better, but no one realises it. The world is better today than it's ever been before. There has never been a time for you to be born than today. But no one realises that. So what we need to understand is that the world's a great place and everything's better than we're led to believe. This is the time to absolutely build windmills and look at all these disruptors that might scare people as opportunities to change and thrive. So QF32 was my challenge. Sally Summerberger said, I never thought that my whole career would be judged in 4 minutes of flight. And I never thought that I'd have to synthesise my whole life's experience to handle something that I'd never been trained for and I certainly never expected. And the National Transport Safety Bureau said, you know what, Sally? That's hogwash. We've listened to the data, of course, on that flight. We can tell you've trained for that flight every day of your life. Sally was truly resilient. QF32 was my test, and we passed. It was a team success, and I can't speak highly for all those people that when they were put to the test, they passed with flying colours, and 469 people go home without a single injury. Maybe one day you'll be put to the test. I've documented the elements of resilience that work for your personal life, your corporate life, your community life. I tell you why, that will give you the hows and the whats. So that when a crisis hits, you might not just even survive, or you will survive, but in the good times, you will absolutely thrive. Thank you.